And if it's not like the irritants of life that are going to get your blood pressure up, it's the abject stupidity, hypocrisy of the people around us. And I'm talking to Democrats today. I'm talking to capital D Democrats, people who voted for Kamala Harris, people who supported Joe Biden. Once upon a time, had a discussion with not my boss, but the boss of someone near and dear. And we were discussing as to, whether or not the brain of a lefty liberal Democrat is different physiologically, physically, chemically than the brain of a right-wing conservative Republican. It is obvious that there is a difference. And I try not to think along the lines of like left versus right, but there is a brain difference in people who have no problem being lied to, who have no problem lying. And I've lived long enough now to firmly understand the idea when I was, heard this expression growing up that liberalism is a mental disorder. Liberalism is a mental disorder because on the one hand, you have your leaders, progressive leaders, liberal leaders, Democrat leaders, and I'm talking Canada and America, who are just scoundrels. They have no qualm lying. They have no shame getting caught in a lie and pretending like it never happened. What we're witnessing right now, it doesn't just highlight hypocrisy. It doesn't just highlight dishonesty. It highlights the willful delusion of tens of millions of people who have no qualms being treated like idiots. I'm not trying to be glib or facetious. There's something broken about a progressive, liberal, lefty brain. It doesn't work properly. It doesn't think logically. It doesn't compare comparables. It doesn't understand basic logic, and it doesn't have basic moral decency. And I'm not saying that the right conservative brain doesn't. There's a plenty of hypocrites, scoundrels on the right. I don't look at Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, and say there's a virtuous, ethical man. I happen to know he's not much better than many other politicians, but he's a little bit better. If only, maybe, because he fears getting caught in a lie, as opposed to Justin Trudeau, who just doesn't get fazed by being caught in a lie. Joe Biden doesn't get fazed by being caught in a lie. Karine Jean-Pierre doesn't get fazed. Press Secretary Jen Psaki doesn't care. And they don't care that you know that they're liars. So the news of yesterday, and it's an amazing thing, like I was on with Luke Rudkowski, we talked about it more than we talked about it on my show. I was on yesterday with Mel, we were talking about Matt Gaetz. The news of yesterday, which is already old news as of today, is that Joe Biden pardoned Hunter Biden. But it's not just a pardon. Joe Biden pardon. Let me see here. We got to get the actual document. Is it a PDF? Oh, mother effers, people. Look at this statement from Joe Biden on the pardon of his son. This doesn't have the pardon, but we're just gonna read this. Never mind what we said. Today's a different day. Today I signed a pardon for my son Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision making, and I kept my word, even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. Hold on, I've got to make sure that this is legit. This is from Document Cloud. Like, I'm so nervous about getting something wrong here. This is the actual document. Can you imagine Joe Biden, whose DOJ went after Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro for contempt, and this mother effer is complaining about his son who lied on a firearm application? The party of gun laws is now complaining after having selectively prosecuted, some of you might not have much sympathy for her, but Jenna Ellis, Jeff Clark, I can't even come up with the names of all of the lawyers. Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, Brian Colfa. These mother effers selectively prosecute people, in some cases, into suicide. This scumbag projecting Darvo mother effer. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Accuse your adversaries of doing what you are doing so as to create confusion. They're arguing that his son has been unfairly prosecuted without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser. People are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a form. Can you believe the passive? People are rarely brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they lied on a firearm application. I appreciate some of you out there don't like that requirement in the first place. Mind your own effing business. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. I don't got to tell you what kind of drugs I'm doing. I appreciate some of you feel that way. It might be that many are never brought to trial on felony charges for lying on a firearm application because they plead, like Hunter tried to do before that bogus plea deal was blown wide open. Going to be relevant when we get to Dan Goldman's statement here. Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions, but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties, are typically given non-criminal resolutions. It is clear that Hunter was treated differently. By the way, none of this is new. So when he said he wouldn't interfere because he was going to let the prosecution, the system play it out, he was banking on him getting acquitted or not charged. What he basically said is, I'm taking my second kick at the can because I let it play out and it didn't end the way I think it should have. And now I'm claiming victimhood. It's an amazing thing. I'll get 2 kicks at this. I won't pardon him right from the beginning because that would just look corrupt. I'll let the system play out. I'm not going to get involved. But if the system doesn't acquit my son and not bring charges, then I'm going to get involved. The charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. This could have been written by Donald Trump when they came after him for the Russiagate hoax, impeachment 1, impeachment 2. They are telling you what they are doing. A carefully negotiated plea deal agreed to by the Department of Justice unraveled in the courtroom, with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Had the plea deal held, it would have been an egregious injustice. It would have been, it would have been fair. I'm being sarcastic. Fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's case can rely on any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong. There has been an effort to break Hunter, who's been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. Is this? No, this is it. This is it, man. This is so outrageous. I feel like I'm reading parody, and I'm feeling like maybe the chat is saying, Viva, you're reading parody. You idiot. Stop doing it. You fell for it. This is real. Like when I say that reality and parody have married and merged so much, they're indistinguishable. This is indistinguishable from what the Onion, not the Onion, sorry, the one that's funny, the Bee, the heck is it? The Bee. It's called the, for goodness sake. This is what someone would have drafted if it were intended to be parody. No reasonable person who looks at the cake, we got that. For my entire career, I have followed a simple principle. Just tell the truth. Just tell the American people the truth. They'll be fair-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but as I've wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process and it led to a miscarriage of justice. This should have been written for Donald Trump. And once I made the decision this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. Let's go to the a full and unconditional pardon from Daddy for his son for those offenses against the United States which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period of January 1, 2014 through December 1, 2024, a decade, including but not limited to all offenses charged or prosecuted, including any that have resulted in convictions by special counsel in the United States court, yada, 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 in testimony whereof I hereunto sign my name and cause it to be, yada, 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 done in the city of Washington, first day of December, in the year of our Lord, 2024, and of the independence of the United States. Can you believe this? A decade. I was looking up, a lot of the statute of limitations. This is only for federal crime, so it doesn't really... The Babylon Bee, thank you. Couldn't remember what... This is only for federal stuff. So, whatever the statute of limitations is on, like rape on a state level, sex trafficking on a state level, which is a state crime. Oh, is sex trafficking? Wait, hold on. That's a federal crime. Sorry, hold on. Let me not make a mistake here. Sex trafficking crime. Federal? Yeah, sex trafficking. Human trafficking is a crime. It's the federal. Well, so he's out. A decade, people. And what does that decade coincide with? His involvement in Burisma, his involvement in Ukraine, his involvement in peddling influence in American politics. There's so much to get to on it. Yeah, sex trafficking is across state lines, therefore federal. Yeah, sexual assault is per state. I don't know. I mean, we haven't heard any allegations of that. So there's just so much to get through in the corruption, the insidious projection corruption. Joe Biden, you have to appreciate also that he didn't pay his taxes in time and he paid them back later with interest. Who financed his repayment of the millions that he didn't pay in tax? Where did that revenue come from? Oh, that's right. It came from his dirty dealings in Ukraine. It came from his dirty dealings in China, procured as a result of selling influence and access to his daddy, who was president of these United States of America. No investigation into that. They had a corrupt plea deal to bypass a trial and what that would have exposed via, public court hearings. It was a corrupt plea deal that was so corrupt that when the judge became aware of it, they're like, how the hell did you guys come to this corrupt plea deal? No, we are shredding this plea deal. And then he's scheduled to go to trial. And then he goes to trial. And my prediction was that he was going to get acquitted, because when Jill Biden shows up at court to stare down the jury, I guess they didn't get the message. I thought he was going to get acquitted. He gets convicted. And then before he gets sentenced, and apparently before he can talk, if that's what he was going to do, no trial on the tax stuff, by the way, Daddy comes in and saves the day. A decade is now all forgotten. Now, this is the amazing part here. Let's go back to the montage for a second, shall we? Yeah, let's go back to the montage, because you have to hear these people lie through their godforsaken teeth and get made fools of by the man who said, I would never do it, I would never interfere with this, I would never tip my fingers on the scales of justice while I'm prosecuting Donald Trump, while I'm jailing Peter Navarro and Stephen Bannon for contempt of Congress of an invalidly served subpoena that has never been done before. You want to talk about selective prosecution? Things that have never been done? Eric Holder refused to turn over documents as relates to the Fast and the Furious, which was the government illegally selling guns to the cartel or funneling guns to the cartel that resulted in a border agent getting murdered. And that son of a bitch does not turn over documents and does not get prosecuted for contempt of Congress. A situation that led to murder. Steve Bannon, who defies, as a result of executive privilege, an unlawful invalid subpoena issued by an unlawful, illegally formed committee, gets charged, gets prosecuted, gets convicted, and has to serve his time before his appeal can be heard. Oh yeah, let's talk about selective prosecution, you dirty, rotten scoundrel. Here, let's go back to this. Can I? There we go.
Both things can't be true. And so I think the president, it's really hard for him to say, I won't pardon my son. I will not commute his sentence. How hard that is. It's also coming through that Biden's just
June, by the way.
And a great father.
That's exactly what Joe Biden said after Donald Trump's conviction, that we have to have faith in our judicial system, that no one is above the law, and that a jury of 12 ordinary people looks at facts, not political spin, and decides whether someone has broken the law. And the fact that he's going to respect this verdict, even though he could wipe it out with a stroke of a pen, even though he could have kept it from happening with a stroke of the pen, tells America what they need to know about the man who occupies the Oval Office.
And I feel like that just undercuts whatever the Republican argument here is about Biden rigging the system among the voters that will actually matter in this next election.
Well, there are three things there. I mean, number one, the conviction of Hunter Biden shows the system is not rigged. It also shows this is the way the rule of law looks. This is what it looks like when no one is above the law. And President Biden has also said, has said on the record that he will not use his pardon power to free his son if Hunter Biden gets a prison sentence. Now, there are some people who are...
Well, stop, because it's 6 more minutes of this utter hypocrisy. And it's not just Joe Biden who said it. I don't have the full montage of the Karine Jean-Pierre, but let me see if I can pull up at least a couple of them here. Was this one here? No, it's not that one. When I get my new computer, we're going to be able to see these in real time. Flashback, Karine Jean-Pierre. Listen to this. I mean, you saw these yesterday, but we're going to get a little more into this.
Second one, will the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
You asked that already.
This question before. It was
I've asked
it
it.
me not too long ago.
Are you stupid?
And I was very clear, and I said no.
Oh, no. Karine Jean-Pierre said no. You didn't hear me, jackass? You asked me this question. I already answered it. How dare you ask it again? Oh, but he did it a little bit later. Here, how about this one?
The president would not pardon or commute the sentence for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no. It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
What was it that Malcolm X said about the white liberal? I mean, it's worth, because I'm noticing a trend. Set aside Karine Jean-Pierre. She's, she touted her identity politic credentials the first day she came into office. I think she said she was a black woman, lesbian, immigrant. Did I miss any there? So you can't attack her, because if you attack her, you're going to be a racist, misogynist, xenophobe, homophobe. Set aside Karine Jean-Pierre, I noticed a trend of the people on the Fox News montage, white liberals. Malcolm X, I'm going to read the entire thing. Maybe I'm going to have to skip a few words in it because Viva ain't interested in getting canceled just yet. Malcolm X, quote, "The white liberal is the worst enemy to America and the worst enemy to the black man. Let me first explain what I mean by this white liberal. In America, there's no such thing as Democrats and Republicans anymore. That's antiquated. In America, you have liberals and conservatives. This is what the American political structure boils down to among whites. The only people who are still living in the past and thinks in terms of I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican is the African American. I'm not getting in trouble today, people. He's the one who runs around bragging about party affiliation, and he's the one who sticks to the Democrat or sticks to the Republicans. But white people in America are divided into two groups, liberals and Republicans, or rather liberals and conservatives. And when you find white people vote in the political picture, and when you find white people vote in the political picture, they're not divided in terms of Democrats and Republicans. They're divided consistently as conservatives and as liberal. The Democrats who are conservative vote with Republicans who are conservative. Democrats who are liberals vote with Republicans who are liberals. Sounds like actually like a blue pill versus a red pill. You find this in Washington, D.C. Now the white liberals aren't white people who are for independence, who are liberal, who are moral, or who are ethical in their thinking. They are just a faction of white people who are jockeying for power for the same as the white conservative are a faction of white people who are jockeying for power. Now they are fighting each other for booty, for power, for prestige, and for the one who is the football in the game of the African American. 20 million black people, I should say black people, 20 million black people in this country are political football, a political pawn, an economic football, an economic pawn, a social football, a social pawn. The white liberal is the worst enemy to America and the worst enemy to the black man. And if the montage has taught us nothing, it's that Malcolm X, at least in respect of this particular quote, is, let's just see if we go through.
We're skeptical about that, but I don't think
White
there's
liberal?
any reason to doubt his word at this point.
Okay.
He's one of the greatest,
White liberal?
most decent men I know.
What, do we have an exception here? Who's this?
Global huddle,
That's CNN.
letting the world know that he will not wipe away the decision of 12 of his son's peers to convict him of federal gun charges.
He just did
And when
that,
it's over, you didn't hear Joe Biden whining about a Trump judge, even though the judge here is literally a Trump judge appointed by Trump. Rather,
He's speaking about a DOJ prosecution of his own son. But because of how those words so completely contrast with what his opponent, now a convicted felon himself, continues to say about the U.S. courts.
And there's
we're done. We're done. Do you understand what is also so insidious about that is that they lie to your face. They get two kicks at the cans because had he been acquitted, then Biden would never have had to pardon him, and he would have been able to stand true to his undertaking not to pardon him and let the system play out. They lie for virtue points at the time, and they get them at the time because liberals, progressives, Democrats are dumb, low information voters. So they lie at the time. They get the virtue signaling points at the time. They know damn well they're lying. They know damn well they have no intention of respecting that undertaking. If he gets acquitted, all the better, never have to do it. And if he doesn't, I'll wait until the time is right to do it. Is the time right to do it? To be a hypocrite and a liar during election? Hells to the bells, no. That's when you say it. That's when you go and get those virtue points. Look how much better I am than Donald Trump. Look how much more ethical I am than Donald Trump. And they get those points. Oh, they get the media running in tandem like Operation Mockingbird 2.0. Liars, thieves, and crooks. The opening theme to the show. 5 times August. Get it on that Apple place where you get music. I gotta, we're just gonna go through some of the mental gymnastics of people who I believe are mentally impaired, mentally compromised, however you want to call it. Who's the one that said, pardoned his son? Let me see here. Oh, here we go. This one's great. Claude Taylor. And for those of you who don't know, Claude means Claude. Claude Taylor, who is this person? Chairman Dog Pack will do billboards. I do room raider. Former White House staff on Blue Sky. The Blue Sky now is the latest avatar indicating stupidity. You got your Ukrainian flag. You got your syringe emoji. You got your face mask emoji. You got your rainbow flag, whatever the heck it is now. You got your Mastodon, whatever the hell it is. I don't even know if Mastodon is still around. And now add it to the list of indicators of mental illness, of mentally deficient idiots, dishonest, scumbag liars. Blue Sky, by the way, pedo porn central, if anybody's into that. I'm not even going to that website. Claude Taylor says, Joe Biden didn't lie. He changed his mind. There's a difference. I support him 100%. You know what this is like? I swear now, I'll steel man this a little bit. Can you lie about something that you undertake not to do in the future? Most honest, ethical, moral, God-fearing people would say, of course. It's like when you get married and you say, till death do us part. Well, some people say it's not a lie because circumstances change. And I guess, like barring the unforeseeable, when circumstances change, but within the realm of reality that exists as reasonable futures, when you make the undertaking, if those reasonable realms of reality occur and then you change your mind, yeah, that's called a lie. Like, I guess the issue is, I promise never to eat meat. I'll never eat meat again. Well, if a meteorite that only kills plants hits Earth and destroys all plants, you didn't lie because you're forced to eat meat. You might say the circumstances changed in a way that was unforeseeable when I made the promise, and therefore it's not a lie because of that. If you have a relationship, which is the way I responded to this, and I say, I promise I'll never cheat on you. I mean, this, first of all, I'll never cheat on anybody because I believe you're taking your own life into your own hands when you do that. I will never cheat on you. And then you go cheat on someone? I didn't lie. I just changed my mind. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Unless, someone, you lied because you said you wouldn't do something, and then for no better reason, within the realm of predictable futures, you then went ahead and did it after having scored all of the virtue, ethical, and political points that you wanted by asserting the lie. But these people are idiots. They don't mind getting lied to, and they don't mind lying in turn. They don't mind becoming a part of the lie. Is it because they're unethical? Is it because they're stupid? Is it because they would fail a basic IQ test in terms of which one of these has similar patterns? I mean, pattern recognition is a very, very important thing for survival. And it seems to me that many of these idiots, let's go to Brian Taylor Cohen, do not understand pattern recognition. Dinesh D'Souza says, no one is above the law except my son Hunter. Now, you'll notice Dinesh didn't make it about himself or even reference his own pardon. He's just highlighting Joe Biden's hypocrisy, to which Brian Taylor Cohen, his name used to be No Lie with BTC, ripping off Bitcoin as far as I'm concerned, but says to Dinesh D'Souza, you were literally pardoned by Trump. Yeah, Trump said he was going to pardon Dinesh D'Souza because Dinesh D'Souza was the victim of the actual targeted prosecution, selective prosecution that dirty old Joe talked about in his letter, his mea culpa, his backtracking on his lie about his son. Dinesh D'Souza was prosecuted in a way that nobody else has been prosecuted before for similar circumstances. Geraldo Rivera says most dads, including this one, would do what Joe Biden did. He said he wouldn't do it, Geraldo. I mean, I know that you don't mind spewing lies and you don't mind being lied to and you don't mind people thinking of you as a liar so long as you get to cash that fat check. He said he wouldn't do it. So saying that most dads would do it would be fine. He should have just then left that possibility open from the beginning. Okay, blood is thicker than water. Oh, yes. He was willing to tarnish his honor and reputation to save his child, who he believed was being shafted. Too bad, but it's not like he appointed him ambassador of France. Now, for those of you who don't get the reference, I don't know that Trump has Charles Kushner, ambassador France. I mean, you want to talk about Trump wants to pardon him so he can become ambassador to France. I don't think he's named it. I'm not even sure that he's doing it. Trump selects Kushner's father for ambassador to France. At least that's according to CNN Politics. So for those of you who don't get the reference, Geraldo is now trying to draw an analogy to Charles Kushner being selected to be an ambassador to France. Oh, it's not like he's picking him to be ambassador to France. Stupid people, or at least people with low IQs, can't recognize patterns, similarities, and differences. So you might look at this and say, oh, a pardon is a pardon is a pardon. No, it isn't. Not when you've been convicted and served your freaking sentence. Oh, it's actually going to segue perfectly into pardon all Jan 6s, which is where this is going to go. Charles Kushner, for whatever he did wrong, and however you feel about having Jared Kushner's dad get involved in politics, I can understand people don't like that. Certainly don't like the names and don't like the implications. Set that aside. Charles Kushner served his sentence. He suffered the actual consequences of being adjudicated a felon. He served his sentence, and afterwards, for what the pardon is for, to relieve people of the undue burden of the felony convictions when it's not necessarily serving a practical purpose, then you can get a pardon. If Hunter wants to go and serve whatever sentence he was going to get and then get pardoned, well, then you might have something closer to an analogy, to an analogous comparable circumstance. Geraldo, you idiot Rivera. Until such time as that happens, you don't have comparables. Oh my good Lord, I almost forgot this. Here, let's start with stupid people who can't identify patterns and thus can't identify distinctions. President Biden pardoned his son. Who is this guy? Richard Angwin. I love discovering idiots. Political junkie, progressive. Okay, well, that means that his brain is smoother than most. President Biden pardoned his son Hunter and the GOP is upset. Can you believe the hypocrisy? And there's a meme that says conservatives are more pissed at Hunter Biden for buying a gun than they ever were at Kyle Rittenhouse for using his to kill 2 human beings. Oh, don't mention that they were 2 convicted pedophile, disgusting criminals to begin with, who got exactly what they were asking for by attacking a man with a gun. Set aside that. Hunter Biden had a trial. Hunter Biden, probably the most politically favored or least politically protected defendant, had a trial and was convicted. Kyle Rittenhouse had a trial as probably one of the more politically disfavored defendants and was acquitted. And so, yes, he was forced to use his gun to kill 2 human beings, one of whom was a pedophile and the other was a dirty criminal who were attacking him specifically to cause grievous bodily harm, thus forcing him to kill those people and only those people. One was convicted, one was acquitted. So kind of apples and oranges, or maybe like apples and steak. So congratulations, progressive brain, for not identifying patterns or, by consequence, distinctions. The best. And I think we're going to leave it on this. The best. Dan, the scumbag of all scumbag Goldman. First of all, before we even get into this, let's keep the audio off. Can we appreciate what Dan Goldman... Is Dan Goldman going for like an Eminem look? Look at what Dan Goldman looks like today, and look at what he looked like. What, it can't be more than 6 months ago? If this is what happens when you sell your soul to the devil. First of all, he's got wild druggy eyes. Like, that man looks like he's on something. And I'm going to make an Ozempic joke only because I will make a joke about a community note later on. But he doesn't look well compared to 4 to 6 months ago. Listen to what the scumbag of all scumbags, Dan Goldman, has to say about what he had to say back in the day.
In July of 2023, just after that plea deal fell through, this is what you said. I want to watch.
Do you think a pardon for his son would be a mistake?
Yes, and I don't think there's any chance that President Biden is going to do that, unlike his predecessor, who pardoned all of his friends and anyone who had any access to him. And I think you see that in this case, where he kept on, and Merrick Garland kept on, a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney to investigate the president's son. If there is not an indication of the independence of the Department of Justice beyond that, I don't know what we could look for.
What does that feel like, watching yourself back then, reassuring people that Biden was not going to issue a pardon for his son?
Yeah, and I think that if that plea agreement and that plea deal had gone through, there would be no pardon.
Just let's pause it right there. Set aside the fact that the plea deal had already fallen through, so this idiot liar can't even keep his lies in order. If the plea deal had gone through, there wouldn't have been a pardon. No shit, Sherlock. Holy crap. Hey, Dan, did you go to law school for that? If they had solidified the plea deal, for which there could no longer be a subsequent prosecution, then he wouldn't have been pardoned. No shit, you absolute moron. The only problem with your stupid theory, the plea deal had already fallen through when he said those things. That is to say, Dan Goldman.
Yeah, and I think that if that plea agreement and that plea deal had gone through, there would be no pardon. That was a satisfactory outcome.
It already fallen
that
through.
Only was...
What's that? Oh shit! What?
Sorry.
Well, when you reacted, this was when the deal had fallen through.
I would like to see the rest of that answer. They can't even keep track of their own lies. Had the plea deal not fallen through, there would have been no need for a pardon. Well, there you go. That's law 101 right there. Congratulations. You're an idiot. By the way, the deal had already fallen through, so what you said as to your justification for repeating the lie makes no sense. But by the way, if the pardon was only necessary because the plea deal had fallen through, yeah, dude, I'm telling you, Maria 36, he looks like he's on drugs. Doesn't look good at all. If the plea deal was only necessary because if the pardon was only necessary because the plea deal had fallen through, why the hell does the pardon cover a decade? All offenses, including but not limited to those which were charged and prosecuted. Oh, so you're telling me that because the plea deal fell through, well, now he needs the protection because the plea deal didn't fall through, so he gets a pardon for a decade in perpetuity throughout the universe for any and all crimes he may or may not have committed, that he may or may not have been charged with or prosecuted. Thanks, Dan. You know what would have happened if he had gotten a plea deal? He would have been pardoned anyhow for the same things, for the same decade, for the same... I don't know that there's been a more expansive pardon in the history of America. I can't pretend to have been following things to even know. 10 years, all of his activities at Burisma. Some people are saying this is the cover-up to protect Joe Biden, to which I say, not really, because, what's his face? Hunter can have his ass hauled before committee and be compelled to answer questions. And now he can't plead the fifth anymore because there's no risk of self-incrimination. But that won't stop him from pleading the fifth. That won't stop him from defying a congressional subpoena. And that won't stop anyone from not going after him the way they have not gone after everybody who's defied a congressional subpoena, unless you happen to be a capital or Republican Trump supporter or in his orbit, Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon. So nothing's going to stop former crackhead, felonious firearm application, tax dodging because he's getting it from illegal activities, shady activities in overseas. Nothing's going to stop him from defying a congressional subpoena because he knows he's never going to be prosecuted for it. Because go back to that letter, they don't prosecute their own unless they really, really have to for specific reasons, including cover-up. The bottom line, though, I'm sticking to my prediction. Biden's going to pardon himself and Trump before leaving office. He's in no rush to do that because, hypothetically, this is not a schadenfreude or a fear hiding a wish. There's no but to that. I do not wish this type of ill on people. Had Biden died before issuing that pardon, Kamala Harris comes into power. Kamala Harris, given the obvious animosity between her and Biden, the Harrises and the Bidens, probably maybe might not have pardoned Hunter Biden. So there was something of an existential time requirement on pardoning Hunter because if Joe dies and Kamala becomes 47, she doesn't necessarily pardon Hunter and he might never get that pardon. So he had to do that more urgently than he has to pardon himself. If he passes away, a self-pardon is more or less relevant. It includes everything, by the way. It includes everything that is a federal crime. Does it include murder? Asks Dawn Darkstar 86. Let's pull up the Gary Oldman meme. It includes everything that would be a federal crime that was maybe potentially committed in that decade. So Biden is not in as much of a time squeeze to pardon himself because there's only so many ways he leaves office before his term. And so he can pardon himself up to the last day, unless he passes away, in which case he doesn't need a pardon. Okay, but so this is not as much of a protection of Biden yet as I see, because they can still haul Hunter before a congressional investigative committee. He can still, unlawfully plead the fifth and then go after him for that. It'll take years and whatever. And by that time, Joe Biden is on borrowed time in any event. And that's it. And they may or may not even prosecute Hunter Biden for defying a congressional subpoena. It's corruption through and through. But the issue is that you have to ask yourself, like, people, we throw the word around pardon, and I don't think people actually take a moment to ask, like, what is the purpose of the pardon? Hold on. What is there's a good justification for the pardon. What is the purpose of a presidential pardon? There's a reason why they actually exist in the first place. And as we're going to get into, by the way, let me just make sure that I credit the person whose thought this was, because it wasn't my original thought. Trennis J. Evans III. So I started following this guy after I heard this insight, as he was one of the speakers during a Twitter space yesterday for the January 6ers, pardon all January 6ers. Trennis J. Evans III, Condemned USA. He said, the pardon doesn't exist for innocent people. And it's an amazing thing. Like, you always say, like, oh yeah, you pardon innocently convicted. No, if someone is innocent and wrongfully convicted, that's not what the pardon was for. If they're innocent and wrongly convicted, that's what a properly functioning justice system is for. Now, it could encompass that as well, because what it is supposed to cover, the pardon, is political injustices or alleviating the burden of a felony conviction in circumstances where it's an undue, unwarranted hardship. A pardon is an executive order granting clemency for conviction. It may be granted at any time after the commission of the crime. After the commission of the crime, not after the wrongful conviction of an innocent person for a crime they never committed. I know it's Wikipedia, take it for what it's worth. Conversely, the persons may apply 5 or more years after their sentence has been completed. However, the president's pardon power is not restricted by temporal constraints, except that the crime must have been committed. Well, there's gray zone around that. Pardon is an expression of the president's forgiveness and ordinarily is granted in recognition of the applicant's acceptance of responsibility for the crime and established good conduct for a significant period of time afterwards. It's to alleviate the burden of what a felony conviction carries for the rest of the life of the person. If they transgressed for a brief moment in time, that's what the pardon was for. It wasn't there to pardon innocent people who were wrongfully convicted. It doesn't signify innocence. Its practical effect is restoration of civil rights and statutory disabilities, firearm rights, occupational licensing, etc. So once you understand that, the pardon is not there to, get innocent people out of jail, although it could be used for that, you then say, well, what is it for? It's to forgive people who transgressed momentarily and it's to forgive people who were unduly punished by a highly politicized system. In other words, the pardon exists for the Jan 6ers, all of them. And this is what we discussed yesterday during this Twitter space, which was hosted by Jake Lang, who's currently in jail, who Jake Lang committed, I guess what is according to Horwell definition. By the dictionary definition, Jake Lang, one of the January 6th political prisoners, as far as I'm concerned, committed acts of violence against the police. The question is, why? The question is, did he have a lawful excuse for that act of violence that he committed? Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 people. You can't pretend he didn't. The question is, did he have a lawful excuse, a lawful defense to kill those 2 people? And he did. So the question is going to be, set aside the entrapment, set aside whether or not they were led in. Anybody who struck a police officer with a baseball bat, a baton, pepper spray, did they have what might otherwise be a lawful excuse to do it? If it turns out that the police were out there provoking with concussive grenades, rubber bullets, firing on the crowd, triggering a response from the crowd, killing members of the crowd, would you then say that some members of the Jan 6 violent convicted people were lawfully exercising violence against police violence? You can defend yourself against a policeman who's assaulting you. They don't have carte blanche to beat the shit out of you. So the question is this, did Jake Lang, who was there and by his own testimony, so you can believe it or not, who witnessed Roseanne Boyland get struck by police officers, trampled to death by the stampede and what the police caused by way of their aggressive, instigative, if that's a word, conduct, he swung back. Does he go to jail for 20 years? Even assuming it's not lawful self-defense, a man with no prior criminal record, as far as I understand, if he did have that moment of transgression where he just got so pissed off watching the boots of a weaponized government stomping literally on a woman to death, he transgressed. He struck back. That's what the pardon is for. It's not for the grannies who were let in and then wrongfully convicted, although it should apply to them as well. So that is the bottom line. The pardon is in existence for the situation that is the January 6th. Whether it was lawful self-defense, whether it was a momentary transgression that should not by any means be used to ruin the rest of the lives of all of these patriots. That's what it's for. And I say, at this point, all of them, without exception, without trying to filter through who got a fair trial, who didn't, who committed acts. None of them got a fair trial. None of them got fair treatment under the law. None of them got lawful disclosure under the law. None of them. And so you fucked up. That's it. You're going to have to eat it. And you're going to have to let the world know you screwed up. You don't not disclose video to defendants, get them convicted, force them to plea, and then say, hey, too bad. My bad. No harm, no foul. Wrong. All of them. And I want to tell you, watching Chris Pavlovsky, become the warrior that I think one of the more unsung warriors in this existential battle for the future of America, oddly enough, Canadian boy from Ontario, a key player in the future, I say not just of America, but of the world. His transformation over the years has been wonderful, organic, and above all else, right and righteous. Pavlovsky puts out a tweet yesterday in response to, this is the day before, in response to the Hunter Biden pardon. After today, after pardoning from the party of so-called law and order, of so-called gun laws, a crackhead, drug addict, tax evading scoundrel lying on a firearm application. After that pardon, there's no excuse. There must be pardons for all political prisoners from January 6th immediately. So the only thing you got wrong there is it can't be immediately. It'll be on day one. And day one, and do not let, I say, the Trump administration off the hook. Day one, it must be done. That rhymes, so it must be true.